Welcome to the Heal Your Heartbreak podcast with your host, Breakup Bestie, aka me, Kendra. Breakups are hard, but you don't have to do it alone. Each week, I will be taking you through a different topic as it relates to breaking up, healing from heartbreak, growing in your single life, dating, and getting back into happier and healthier relationships. The goal of this show is to provide support, hope, tips, and to remind you that above all, this too shall pass. Welcome to episode 39 of the Heal Your Heartbreak podcast, and I have another very exciting guest on the show today. Today I have Maya Diamond, who is a dating and relationship coach, but today I'm discussing one area of expertise of hers, which is attachment theory and different attachment styles, which is something that I've been really interested in since going through my last breakup. I had a really good friend of mine give me the book Attached because I was not only struggling with a breakup, but also struggling with the fact that I kept attracting the same kind of emotionally unavailable person into my life and couldn't quite understand why. And after reading that book, so many things clicked for me as to why I kept finding myself in the same position over and over again. And since I have mentioned that book and attachment styles both on my Instagram and in previous podcast episodes, I have gotten a lot of questions, and I really wanted to bring on an expert who could really get into this subject. So today in the interview, we cover what attachment theory is, how it comes to be in our lives. We go over the different kinds of attachment styles from anxious, avoidant, secure. And we discuss not only how that impacts who we attract into our lives, how it impacts our behavior in relationships, and we specifically touch on how your attachment style can impact your breakup and how to best move through it. So Maya is a wealth of knowledge. We touch on so many amazing things. I personally learned so much from interviewing her, and I know you guys will too. And before I get into the episode, I wanted to just give a little warning. Mid-interview, we had some construction noises pop up, so you might hear some noises in the background, but the noises are very few and far between, and of course does not detract from the amazing information that you will get by listening to this episode. So without further ado, here is Maya Diamond. Okay, well, welcome Maya to the Heal Your Heartbreak podcast. I'm so happy to have you on.
Thank you. So wonderful to be here, Kendra.
Well, I would love if you could just start by introducing yourself, what you do, what you help people with, and, give us a little bit of background.
Awesome. So I am based in the Bay Area, and I've been working with women and men on their love lives for the last 13 years, and really focusing specifically on deeply healing their attachment systems so that they can find a healthy, loving partnership. And so I do both the real nitty gritty of, online dating, how to message, all that stuff, but also the deep healing work so that they can really be as healthy as possible and really attract that as well.
I love that. And I spoke to you about this, but the reason I wanted to have you on is I would say this was about 5 years ago. I had just gotten dumped for the third time by by three different people. And the reason was always the same, that they couldn't commit to a relationship. They were emotionally unavailable. And it took me until the third time to realize that it was a pattern. And I had a really good friend of mine give me the book Attached, which was, my intro into attachment theory. And I got to learn all about my attachment style and the reason why I kept gravitating towards men who were emotionally unavailable, which, we'll talk about a little bit later in the episode. Exactly. But what led you to focus on attachment theory and being able to help people with this?
Yeah. So I got my master's in somatic psychology at the California Institute of Integral Studies. And when I was out of grad school and I was coaching, And I found attachment theory actually more, it was so interesting because I did this whole 3-year grad program and 3 years of licensure and all this stuff. But I really kind of found it on my own after grad school and was like, oh my God, this stuff explains everything. And so I think the fact that it explained everything in all my clients' lives, in all of my relationship life, I was like, this is it. And so I just started really using it for myself and my clients, and then kind of got deeper and deeper. And then the other thing I really specialize in is healing that pattern of attracting unavailable people and finding a healthy, loving relationship. And exactly, it's so connected to attachment theory because basically, most of the people who are attracted to unavailable people, most of them are anxiously attached, and most of the unavailable people are more avoidantly attached. And so it really talks about that dynamic in such a clear way. And it's just the truth, which I find it the truth, which is, attachment theory is the idea that we are all organized around relating in a particular way. And so then once you see it, you start seeing it everywhere, and it explains everything. And it's really a fantastic structure and tool to understand so much about relationship dynamics.
Yeah, and coming from my personal experience with it, it was a relief to realize why it was happening, and I relate it so
Exactly.
much. Part of my story is
Mhm.
I'm in recovery from alcoholism, and it was
Mhm.
almost that same thing when I finally realized, like, oh, I have a
Yes.
disease. I'm not
Yes.
just someone that makes bad choices, that doesn't have a good moral compass. There's a reason that explains this. And
Yeah.
it was just such a relief for me to find that at, you know,
Exactly.
at that time. And it seems like you were very, at least, I think attachment styles have gained popularity probably in the last few years. So you were very early in terms
Ahead of,
of,
yeah, it was like 10 years ago when I was like, oh my God, I'm going to start using this with all my clients and really, really deepen the work around it. And I agree. Yeah, for myself, it continues to be a relief in terms of, oh, that's the part of me. Because I believe we all have these different parts of ourselves. We're not all one thing or one attachment style. Oh, that's the part of me that's feeling anxiously attached right now. Or, wow, that person really triggered that anxious attachment part of me. And so it allows me to have compassion and also that like awareness, like, okay, that's my little girl who's super anxiously attached and she really wants to do everything she can to make this person love her, right?
yeah, absolutely. And before we dive in, I'm
Hmm.
sure a lot of people are familiar with attachment style, but I'd love if you could, just for those who aren't familiar, give, a
Yeah.
brief description on what it is and where it comes from.
Yes. So, like I said, it's the way that we're organized around relating. And it really is based on your attachment style, is based on both your biological genes, but also your primary caregiver and the way that they treated you and related to you growing up, and also their attachment style and their nervous system, which is kind of imprinted into you. And so the attachment theory is based, Bowlby is a psychologist who's no longer with us, and he was one of the first kind of attachment theorists, and he really developed it as well as Mary Ainsworth. And so everything's kind of built on that. And in terms of the four attachment styles, there's four attachment styles, which is secure, which means you feel like there's more than enough love to go around. If an attachment person, if your partner leaves, you feel like obviously you'll feel sad, but you'll feel like you can find another one. You have healthy communication, healthy boundaries, and you really feel deeply internally that you are good, that you're worthy of love, and that, and therefore, if someone doesn't treat you well, you'll leave the relationship. And then the next one is anxious, which is um, feeling a little bit preoccupied with the relationships, a little bit obsessed, kind of putting your worth outside of yourself. having a hard time speaking your needs, having a hard time having boundaries, and kind of feeling a little bit of a hypo. There's the nervous system is more hypo aroused. So the deal is when you were younger, when you were a child, if you more lean towards this anxious attachment style, your parent or primary caregiver, you didn't know when they were going to give you love and affection, and so your nervous system is kind of now on high alert, not knowing when that love or affection is going to come, and kind of waiting for it a little bit with an anxious energy, or definitely an anxious energy. And then the next one is avoidant, which means that you either had engulfment from a parent growing up, meaning your parent or primary caregiver was just too enmeshed in your energy system and yourself, and you just felt really engulfed, like they were really kind of taking over energetically, and that you didn't have enough space, or there was a lot of neglect. And so in response, you have a hard time really maintaining a consistent level of intimacy. You want to have like intimacy and then a lot of space, and then intimacy and a lot of space. So you can tend to push partners away or get overwhelmed by intimacy, and be very, very self-reliant, because there's a sense of, I can't really rely on others. I can only rely on myself. And then the last one is called disorganized. And that's when you're a combination of both anxious and avoidant. And it's when growing up, there was real chaos in the family, whether it's abuse between the parents or abuse, child abuse on yourself that you experienced, maybe sexual abuse. And so your source of love was also a source of panic and fear.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting. I'm not as familiar with the disorganized
Yeah.
one, but so if you could give like a general kind of
Mhm.
range, is the majority of people, are the majority of people secure, or where does the majority of the population lie?
I think according to the research, it's around, you know, 65% secure, I believe. And then the rest is a combination of anxious, avoidant, and disorganized. In the people that I work with, it's usually, mostly people who are more anxious, avoidant, and disorganized. So that's the insecure attachment kind of branch. So, yeah. So yeah, but what I see, I mean, the interesting thing, again, we're a combination of all four. And so yes, there's probably around 65% of the I would say probably 50 to 65% of the population that is their highest attachment style would be secure. But nobody is 100% secure.
Yeah. And I feel like that makes sense, because if you are secure, you're not necessarily spending a lot of time thinking about how you
Yeah,
relate to other people. So you
exactly.
wouldn't necessarily seek help for it. And I
No.
find the
Yeah.
same. I'd say a majority of the people in my community that I hear from about attachment
Mhm.
style tend to fall in the anxious
Mhm.
category. And
Mhm.
that is absolutely what I have been most of my life, a majority anxious. And I
Yes.
had wonderful parents, but they both traveled for work
Mm.
very
Mhm.
consistently. So I had a lot of nannies and,
Yeah.
other caregivers around that changed pretty frequently. So once I heard that, I was
Mhm.
like, okay, this
That
completely
makes
makes
sense.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Totally.
I think I spent so much of my dating life being completely preoccupied with the relationship, and
Mm.
would honestly feel like physically sick if I wasn't hearing back from someone, was
Yep.
always worried about them walking away.
Yep.
I'd never heard it said this way, but that your worth is outside of yourself. I
Yeah.
related to that so
Yeah.
much that
Yeah.
whoever was in my life or whatever person I was dating was the one that defined how I
Your
felt,
worth.
and
Yes.
yeah, and defined my worth.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
my next question, and this, comes from personal experience. Like I said, most of my life I was anxious, but I would
Mhm.
say in my marriage, I feel pretty secure. Like I don't
Yeah.
have a lot of those same anxious thoughts. So can
Yeah.
you talk about how that can change throughout our lives, or maybe just from relationship to relationship?
Exactly. It's very so this attachment your attachment style is very dynamic. It's based on your childhood, but also the relationships that you're in. Exactly. And so there's a fluidity involved. So you could, for example, if your last relationship was, um, maybe it was really abusive. And so then maybe now you're a little bit more on the avoidant side because you're afraid of intimacy, you're afraid someone's going to hurt you again, something like that. Or maybe, um, maybe are more anxious and then you partner with someone who's more secure. And then in the relationship, you feel really calm and relaxed and you feel like I can depend on this person. This person has my back. And so then your attachment style becomes more secure. Then if you're really secure and you're with someone who's super avoidant, and I've seen this happen with my clients. Yeah, this is actually, I've seen this once with a very secure client who became very anxious because he was dating someone more on the avoidant side. But anyways, then exactly. So then you're really secure and then you become really anxious. So it can really change based on who you're with and what relationship you've just come out of.
Okay.
And so that's why it's so important to do the healing work that's needed. For example, if you've gotten out of a relationship with a narcissist, and you may not trust yourself in terms of your choices, you may not trust that there's healthy partners out there for you, and just not trust, yeah, your like deep instincts and knowing, because wow, you made this choice that really didn't work out. So doing the healing work on whatever happened in that last relationship is so important for creating a new relationship.
And that's what happened with me. I was in a narcissistic relationship from 18 to 21. And what happened afterwards, because I didn't do the healing work right after, it took me a few years to even come to terms with the whole thing. But
Yeah.
that relationship really, like, I wouldn't say ruined, but really hurt my self-esteem and my self-worth. And
Yes.
I ended up becoming even more anxious because I was searching for someone that was going to cure that for me instead of finding it for
Yes.
myself. And that's when I got
Yes.
into that whole pattern of going after people that were emotionally unavailable.
Yes, exactly. A lot of times the unavailability pattern can happen because we've been so hurt by our last partner, and so we want a relationship, but the level of intimacy, if we're really with someone available, then we're going to have such a deeper level of intimacy, and so there's a part of us that really is afraid of that, and so it's almost safer to be with someone unavailable, even though it's excruciatingly painful as well. So yeah, I
Yes.
played that out for a long time after I got out of a relationship when I was 25. At the end of the relationship, he cheated on me after 6 years of being together. And so it was such a painful betrayal that it really kind of pushed me into that pattern, or it really, yeah, just caused that pattern for me. And then combined with, yeah, my childhood relationships with, especially with my father.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you mentioned that we can switch into different attachment styles depending on who we're with. But if someone is single and maybe they're anxious or they're avoidant, are there things that we can do on our own to help move us towards having a bit of a more
Secure.
secure attachment style?
Yes, and that's what I really specialize in. So yeah, I would say that's really key for anyone who's listening. If you feel like you're, more anxious or more avoidant or more disorganized, that, it's really an opportunity to heal that in yourself. And what happens when you do is it positively affects all of your relationship with your kid, your relationships at work, your romantic relationships, your relationship with your family. And because becoming more internally secure, more confident, more feeling more deeply worthy is just gonna be so powerful for you. And so yeah, and then it's cool because then the person that you now, this new you that you bring into the relationship with this new partner, is gonna be, it just makes the relationship so much easier because we've all seen, or I know I've experienced from, when I was younger and more anxious, um, doing things that were just not helpful to the relationship. We call, in attachment theory, we call it, I'm forgetting the word right now, but I like to call it acting out, right? So you're kind of acting out the anxiety by doing, maybe calling multiple times or texting incessantly or, whatever it is, it's not going to be helpful for a relationship. And so there's all these behaviors. There's the actual deep internal security, but there's the actual secure behaviors. And so when you act secure, it's much easier to have a healthy partnership, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I remember reading in one of the books that that's a pretty telltale sign of someone with an anxious attachment style is they'll test their partner to make sure that they're
Yes.
not going to run away. So
Right.
you'll put these little tests on them and say, well, if they pass this test, that means that they're really
Then
in
I
the
can trust
relationship.
them.
Then
Yeah.
I can trust them.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Um, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about you mentioned it in the beginning, but there's this phenomenon about anxious people tend to be, which I feel like is like some, the universe is like
Twist,
sick joke
cruel.
on us. Yeah.
So
But
true.
anxious people tend to be attracted to avoidant people, which is not helpful for either side.
Yeah. I think the best way to explain it is that if you're an anxious, being with an avoidant is a perfect match for your deep internal beliefs about yourself. So the anxious's deep internal belief is, I'm not enough, I'm not lovable, there's something wrong with me, someone's going to leave me, I'm not special enough to be chosen. And then the avoidant is going to treat you in all those ways that it's going to mirror to you those beliefs. And so it's a perfect like keyhole into each other. And so it feels very um, congruent to your belief system. And then for the avoidant in reverse, the avoidant believes I can't have my sense of self and be in relationship. I can't have my freedom. I'm going to be overwhelmed in relationship. Um, if I'm in a relationship, then I'm not going to be able to have my own life. Um, yeah. And so then when they're with the anxious, they feel overwhelmed. They feel, the anxious wants too much of their attention. They feel like they have too much expectations on them. And so again, it just kind of fits in like a little key to a hole. But then the truth is that's not actually the truth, right? The truth is an avoidant can have a relationship and can have their sense of self. And anxious is lovable and isn't too much or is not enough. So those are all, I would say, false beliefs. Those internal beliefs are all false, but our psyches are so powerful in creating our experience. And so it just magnetically, it's like this magnet attraction. And then I think, you know yeah, there's something that the magnets attract, and then it creates that dynamic, the ups and the downs, which is very dramatic, which is, very passionate, which is, I think, I would say Hollywood has also kind of reified the belief that we need to be in these passionate, relationships. And so it seems like, oh, this is what love is. When guess what? That's not really, in my opinion, healthy love. That's more a toxic form of love. And it creates codependency.
Yeah. I wanted to touch on a couple of things you just said. What you were saying, like we tend to attract things that confirm the narrative that we have of ourselves. And I experienced that in the narcissistic relationship. I was like, all the things he was telling me on the outside about, you're not good enough, all the name calling, all that stuff completely matched what I told myself in my
Yeah.
own mind. So it was, even though it was clearly very painful, it was almost comfortable because it
Right.
was just a mirror. And
Yes.
I think you talked about this before on the last question, but you were saying and I learned this through sobriety, is sometimes we have to act our way into better thinking. So sometimes we
Yes,
can't
totally.
necessarily change our thoughts, but if we start practicing contrary action and doing things like, when you're dating and someone does something to you that's not right, and you say, like, even though my thoughts telling me that I still want to be with this person, I know it's wrong, so I'm going to step away. Like, all of
Yes.
those things probably help with those thoughts, if I'm saying that right.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. It's like when you act in a secure way, then you kind of start, yeah, going through the motions, which allows it to start kind of becoming more in alignment. And then the more you do that, as well as doing the deep inner work, the more it gets integrated. But just the act of exactly like cutting someone off, even you may, your deep internal knowing, I would say that's something that I'm just so passionate about, which is and I think that's kind of what I really, the people that I work with the most are the people that have a deep intuition, which is usually, a lot of the women I work with, they're just so intuitive in their bodies. I think women just have this natural intuition in their bodies, right? And so when we really, but growing up, a lot of times we've been taught not to listen to that small little voice of wisdom. And maybe your parents denied it, maybe school denied it, maybe a culture denied it or doubted it. And but when we tune back into our internal wisdom, right, our little girl may say, oh, this is so like attractive because he's unavailable, or the anxious part of you. But your intuition might say, actually, like this really feels like shit. This feels awful. I don't feel good in this relationship. Maybe this guy, does want to marry me and have my children, but I feel like shit. Okay, listen to your body. Listen to your body's intuitive knowing, because our bodies are amazing, um, amazing messengers for our lives. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that, because there have been so many times in my life where I have felt that, and like, I've had many phases in my life where I have crazy stomach problems, and it's because I was in a situation that was
Yes.
so stressful and I kept myself in it because I wasn't listening to that. And so my body's like, okay, like, we can't
We're
hold all
gonna
this
turn it up.
stress.
Yeah.
We're going to turn it up until
Yeah.
you really listen. And yeah, and just
Yes.
being able to pay attention to those, I'm what's the phrase? It's like, pay attention to the road signs because before they become billboards, kind of a thing. Like,
Totally.
pay attention to those little signs, because I feel like if we're in something that's not right, we'll know it. It's just going to be a matter of if we're going to pay attention to that and take action based on
Yeah.
that.
And be courageous around that. Exactly. Yeah. But
Yeah.
but those exactly. And our body is just gonna keep getting louder and until we really pay attention. And our heart and our soul is gonna, have the negative effects of all of that, because we're just all so connected. So we're super connected. And so even if there's a part of you that, like, for the women who are listening who are maybe dating someone unavailable, there might be a wise voice inside that's like, this guy is really not good for me, I really should get out of it. But maybe, and maybe that's in your gut, maybe that's in your head, wherever it is, it's somewhere. But also maybe there's the sexual part of you, the part of you that gets really turned on by this unavailable person, and that's the part of you that is actually wanting to heal. So the
Mm.
part of you that's attracted to this unavailable person is wanting to heal that deep, you know, anxious part of you. And so by going into this relationship, you're just repeating the trauma that you experienced, trying to heal it through the relationship. But guess what? It's better to heal it with a coach, or, someone who really knows what they're doing so that they can guide you toward healing as well as creating new patterns. That's the key. Because our I think it's so interesting how romantic attractions are so based on what we need to heal until we heal it.
If you are looking for even more help and guidance on your breakup, you can get my step by step healing process using my courses. No matter where you might feel stuck in your breakup, there is a course for you. If your breakup just happened and you feel completely overwhelmed by the intense feelings, you can get all the tools to get started with my Breakup Emergency First Aid Kit. If you feel like you can't stop reaching out to your ex, checking their social media, or obsessing about them, you can get all the tools and accountability you need from my Detox Your Ex course. If some time has passed after your breakup, but you still feel like you can't let go of your ex, I can help you let go using my Breakthrough Your Breakup course. If you feel like you might be ready to start dating again, but you're scared to get hurt again or you don't trust yourself to date, I will give you everything you need to feel confident moving forward in my Moving On After Heartbreak course. If you want all of these things to take you from beginning to end after a breakup, you can grab my signature course, Heal Your Breakup. And for my podcast listeners, you can use the code PODCAST to get $25 off the course price of Heal Your Breakup. All of my courses include videos from me, a workbook, and my 90-day breakup journal to help you feel supported and guided through this process. Head to the link in my show notes to take the quiz and find out which course is best for you so you can start moving on, healing, and feeling happy again. Now back to the episode. Yeah, and it'll keep popping up
Yeah.
until we actually
Yeah.
learn the lesson.
Yeah.
We can't just like forget about a lesson and then move on and it goes away. We have to be able to learn it. And I
Yes.
loved what you said about the idea that toxic love, and most people don't even notice that it's toxic love, but just like this sweep you off your feet, like want like say I love you in the first couple weeks and all these grand gestures. And I'm curious if it I don't know if there's research on it or it's just something that you've seen. Do you feel like people who have anxious attachment styles are more likely to fall into like toxic narcissistic relationships because the beginning of toxic relationships typically are amazing. Like the first 6 months, you're like, oh my gosh, how did I meet someone this good? He does all of these things for me. And then all of a sudden, this switch flips and it's completely different.
Totally. Yeah, 100%. I think it's very much definitely empaths attract narcissists, and I would say definitely anxious attachers attract narcissists because exactly they want to feel love, they want to feel chosen, they want to feel special, and narcissists are so good at love bombing in the beginning, and then when it's switched, anxious attachers are so good at continuing to hold on for dear life and not let go, which narcissists love. And so, again, it's a perfect combination that is incredibly unhealthy and hurtful. It's just so painful to be in and can be very abusive. There's the abusive cycle. It might not be physically, but emotionally, it could be both physically abusive, but also emotionally abusive of the loving, the I'm here for you, this is going to work, and then the putting away, the criticizing, the gaslighting. So that can be a cycle that goes over and over again.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And I'm sure a lot of people listening to this are having all those dots connected, like,
Yeah.
oh, this makes sense. Oh, this is why I did that.
Yeah.
And my next question is I want people to make sure that they know that just because you have an anxious attachment style
Mhm.
or an avoidant attachment style
Mhm.
doesn't mean you're doomed to never
No,
find someone or
not
that.
at all.
So can you kind of speak to that on like maybe how someone who's anxious, like maybe without even switching into secure, how they can find like a comfortable relationship
Exactly.
for them?
Exactly. Yeah, I would say it's 100% possible for anyone to have a healthy relationship, no matter what your attachment style. I see that all the time. And I think it's just about, really finding someone who is available and loving and consistent and reliable. And so that might be someone who's a little bit more anxious or, maybe, you know, or someone who's a little bit more secure, or maybe your best match is someone who's a little bit more avoidant. So I would say that the key piece, I mean, mostly for anxious that's not going to be the case, but the key piece is that you're with someone. I would say the key piece is the available, consistent, reliable, and loving, and empathic, right? And so I just want to really hone in on this right now. Okay. So empathy is the ability to feel someone to be with, right? So that you can really be with the person. You feel them, you see them, you hear them, you're joining with them, you feel their experience with them, right? So an empaths have like this crazy amount of ability to do that. They have all these mirror neurons. And so it's just like so easy. I'm an empath, so it's so easy for us to do that, right? Because it just happens naturally. So a narcissist means there's no empathy for the other, or like very, very little empathy for the other. And so I would say that's something that you really want to pay attention to is, does this person have empathy for you as well as other people in their lives? The waiter, do they have empathy for the waiter? Do they have empathy for, the cashier? Do they have empathy for their mom? Do they have empathy for their dad? All of these things are so important, because when you're in a relationship with someone who has empathy for you, then they're going to be emotionally responsive. I did a whole TEDx talk, which I highly recommend everyone listen to, around emotional responsiveness, because this is the key. One of the keys of being a secure partner is being able to be emotionally responsive.
Okay. So that's something that people should be looking out for in terms of a partner. The
Yes,
consistent,
empathy
yeah.
and emotional responsiveness. Those are so, so big. So, so big. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's so great to know because, looking, and obviously hindsight's 2020, but I'm sure if I had more of an awareness with certain relationships, and
Yeah.
I always tell people like this podcast is all about just new perspectives, awareness. So having that awareness, you can
Yes.
kind of point things out as they're happening before maybe you get into like a super invested relationship where you don't feel
Attached.
like there's a way out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yep.
So my next question is, and I guess this one's a little selfish just because I'm, anxiously attached as well as
Yeah.
just a high anxiety person. But for
Yeah.
those that tend to be more anxious,
Yeah.
what are some ways that they can help almost self-soothe in
Hmm.
a relationship rather
Yeah.
than relying on someone else to provide that security for
To
them?
give to the co-regulation. Exactly. So so psychological terms, self-regulation is being able to regulate your own nervous system, and co-regulation is the ability to help your partner regulate their nervous system. And so anxious attachers are really good at co-regulation. We love to soothe someone else as well as be soothed by someone else, but it's harder for us to self-regulate. And so the key piece around that, I would say, is, I think, number one tip that I have is right now, that's coming to mind right now, is meditation, because then you are learning to be with your own thoughts, feelings, and sensations, and be aware of them, and also just be quiet in your own nervous system and accept it all. And so the more that you're with all of those feelings and sensations and you can just be with them, the more you can relax into them. So that would be something really powerful to do on your own. In terms of working with someone like me, I would say doing the deep. So what I do with my clients is we do deep healing work on the trauma, which then allows, then when you get triggered again, the trigger's less intense. And so therefore it's easier to self-soothe. So that really helps. And then I would say, oh, I would say something else that I really teach my clients to do. So I'll just do a broad stroke around it that I think is really not talked about enough, which is pleasure. So pleasure is this amazing pathway. I'm also a recently trained certified erotic blueprint coach. So I'm also now I do dating and relationship coaching and sexuality coaching. And pleasure is this pathway to nervous system regulation. Because guess what happens when you feel pleasure? You get a cascade of oxytocin, those warm, snuggly feelings, loving feelings. So, one thing that's really powerful is to do anything on your own that gets you into pleasure, whether it's self pleasure, whether it's dancing, whether it's taking a walk in nature, anything that brings you pleasure is going to be really good for regulating your nervous system. And that's, I think, something that in our society, especially women, have been taught, that goes along with a guy.
Mm,
Or if I'm in a relation, I remember like I used to think like, oh, well, when I'm in a relationship, I shouldn't really self pleasure because I have a partner, right? But actually, self pleasuring is an amazing tool when you're in a relationship as well, to continue to feed yourself in that way, to continue to love yourself in that way, and to continue to cultivate that relationship with your own body.
so wanted to share one thing that's worked for me with with my anxiety is either journaling or sharing with someone the
Yes.
thoughts that I have, because it
Yes.
allows me to look at the facts instead of just what's going on in my head. So if I can share
Totally.
that with someone else, even just have like hearing it come out of my mouth, I'm like, oh, that's not real, that's not true. Or
Yes.
if I journal it and reread it, I'm like, okay, this isn't actually true. So being able to like get those
Totally.
thoughts out of my head takes a lot of the power out of that.
Yeah, journaling is so powerful for just processing the information or getting the thoughts out, as well as, yeah, talking to a friend or a loved one really can help so much with, regulating your nervous system. Mhm.
And then the question I wanted to end on, since this is a breakup podcast, what are
Yes.
some additional maybe challenges and then also maybe some tools for the different attachment styles after going through a breakup? So you mentioned like anxious people tend to have a harder time with the breakup because they're losing this huge connection to their self-worth and things like
Yeah.
that.
Okay. The challenges and then some tools for breakups.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll start with the anxious. So yeah, it's gonna be, yeah, it can be so, so hard because there's such a strong attachment. Yeah, you just feel maybe so in love with this person still. Maybe they're not right for you, but you still have a lot of attachment to them. And one thing to know is it's usually your little girl who's really attached to that person, right? It's more your adult self might be really know that this person isn't right for you, but your little girl inside might be very, very attached. And if you may have a hard time getting over people, and that's something that's been a pattern for you. And so, the challenge will be to let the person go, to not keep thinking about them, to not keep obsessing about them, to not think about what they're doing, to not get super jealous, to not, stalk them on Facebook, social media. Those are all the challenges. And I would say definitely getting support, a coach, Kendra or me or someone else, getting support or a therapist is really, really, really key. And then it's so powerful. The other thing that I believe about breakups is that there are these amazing opportunities because you get so clear on what you really need, and then so it just is such a ripe time. So getting support is so powerful to support you in that ripe opportunity time. Crisis is also an opportunity. And then yeah, so support, number one tool. Number two, I would start doing a self care practice immediately. Meditation in the morning, affirmations, really bolstering your self care practice, getting exercise, hanging out with friends, um, and getting support. That's it. Okay. Next one, avoidant. Um, this is really interesting. Avoidance can feel so much pain and longing in the breakup. Maybe during the relationship, they were feeling a lot of ambivalence, But as soon as the person leaves, they feel all of the deep sense of love and attachment that they didn't feel while the person was there. And it's because that person has now that person, there's a lot of space. And so they have the space, so that allows them to feel the feelings. And so that's why it's so common for avoidants to get back together with their exes. And then it's also so common for avoidants to get back together and then to break up again, because again, they feel that ambivalence again, and then they break up again. So for avoidance, I would say definitely getting support is also key. To help you unpack, do you really want to be back with this person? Or, is it that or did you have a fundamental truth about this person that they weren't right for you? And so you want to stick with that and know that you can find someone who does have something that you need that they didn't have. Or, I would say, again, getting support with really healing the part of you that might have pushed this person away while you were in the relationship. Or a lot of times avoidants have a hard time really, again, feeling the love and falling in love while they're in the relationship. So I would say doing the work around that so that you can really open your heart in the next relationship would be key. And a tool would be to, we could say journal around getting clarity. So, because a lot of times what I see with avoidance is they'll just want to act out that feeling of longing. Like, I know this person's the right person for me, but I would say really getting clarity before you're drawing that person back in to really make sure they really are the right person for you, because it's so painful if you, again, push them out again.
Yeah. And I think too, I tell people before making a decision to get back together with an ex is like, what frame of mind are you making that decision from? Are you
Yes.
making it out of loneliness? Are you making it because you're
Yes.
uncomfortable? Are you making it because you really do love them and you do really want to be with them? But I think so often when someone makes the decision to get back together with an ex, it's because they're lonely and uncomfortable without them, which isn't a reason to be with
Exactly.
someone.
Yeah, really get support around exactly like feeling good and then deciding. Totally. That's a great point. For the disorganized, I would say, the combination of what I just
Yeah.
said. Yeah, that would be perfect, really. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then with secures, it's, probably all the same tools that we talk about with going through a breakup. It might like mean less. I mean, not that it won't hurt as much, but like it might mean less. It doesn't necessarily mean if a breakup happens that like you're not good enough or you're never going to find someone. Like the fears and the kind of permanence
Yeah.
of it doesn't feel as like permanent, and that's what I tell
Yeah.
people now is like the position I'm in my marriage now, like obviously I love my husband and like want a relationship to be around forever, but I do
Yeah.
know that like if something were to happen, like I would be okay.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't completely lose
Exactly.
myself.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and exactly. And I would say for secures, it's a real opportunity. Things usually do come up because I do work with a lot of secures as well. And things usually do come up from a breakup. And it's an amazing opportunity to work on that stuff that has come up, as well as to find yourself, because a lot of secures maybe are getting out of a 20-year relationship or a 15-year relationship and really coming back to yourself. What do I like? What's important to me? What do I need in my next partner? It's such a ripe opportunity for that. And that's something that I work with a lot of my clients around.
Yeah, I use the same language, slightly different, but pretty much the same language about breakups. They're this amazing, we get so few opportunities in life where we are so willing to do whatever we can to feel better.
Yes.
And so I know that like most of my growing has taken place after breakups because I'm like,
Yes.
give me books, give me journaling assignments.
Yes.
Like I need therapy. So and
Exactly.
it's like I heal the
For motivation
relationship. Yeah, I heal
yeah,
the breakup, but in the like I also am able to heal
too.
stuff from childhood and like work on some of my, character defects that have been coming up in just like
Exactly.
everyday life. So I agree. I think it's
Exactly.
just such an amazing opportunity, as has, learning more about attachment style has been this awesome
Yeah.
opportunity for me to have more self-awareness, and then also figure out like how I can, take care of myself while still, having these really deep relationships.
Yes, exactly. Beautiful.
Well, thank you so much. I'd love
Yeah.
if you could share how people could find you. I know you have a podcast, so if you could give your info, and then I will be putting it all in the show notes, and I'll also link your TEDx talk that you mentioned.
Oh, cool. Awesome. So I have a 4-month program to really deeply heal your attachment style, unravel if you have the pattern of attracting unavailable men, really heal that pattern and find a healthy, loving relationship. And so if you're interested, you can go to Empower Love. If you want to apply for a love breakthrough session to see if you're a good fit for the program, you can go to empowerlove.us/apply. And I have a program for men and a program for women. So we would love to have you in the program. It's so, so powerful, totally life changing. We have so many amazing testimonials. If you want to go to our testimonial page, you can go to empowerlove.us/testimonials. If you want to hear real life stories of all these people who've really shifted their patterns in love, it's so inspiring. And then also, if you want to go to my podcast called Rewire Your Attachment Style, it's just called Rewire Your Attachment Style. It's on anywhere where you can find podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, all these places. And also, I have a free Facebook group called Rewire Your Attachment Style for Lasting Love. If you go to Facebook, you can just search for that. And on there, I do lots of lives and interviews and offer some free coaching. And so we would love to have you in the group.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, again, I will have all of that info in the show notes. And Maya, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of your wisdom. I know you're going to help a lot of people who are listening to this. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. So wonderful to be here.
I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you loved it, I hope you'll leave me a review and share with your friends. If you're interested in learning more about my course, Heal Your Breakup, where I take you step by step through my entire healing process, you can find more info at my website, breakupbestie.com. And if you're new, don't forget to join our private Facebook group so you can connect with other women going through the same thing and seek support. You can search Breakup Bestie Support Group on Facebook to join. Lastly, if you're not already following me on Instagram, I share new tips and support every single day. You can find me at Your Breakup Bestie. Most importantly, hang in there, stay connected with loved ones, be nice to yourself, and remember, it's all going to be okay. I promise.